mainly Manhattan Beach. I went to school at the University of Idaho and came back to San Diego, 1983, and been here ever since.
What about San Diego drew you back and has had you stay there all this time?
Los Angeles was just a little too big. Like I said, I grew up there, and San Diego, I think, was an opportunity to make a significant impact in a downtown that was just really starting to flourish. It was just barely moving on, and we showed up 68 Rambler, $350, and my wife and I got jobs, and that's her in the background there.
Oh, that is you in the photograph.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. That's the way. That's at Hampton Court. We were fortunate to win the Best in Show at Hampton Court with our Maserati.
Wow.
So we came to San Diego, worked for a guy named Homer Delowy for 2 years, and Homer was instrumental in the revitalization of downtown with Pete Wilson, CCDC, the Center City Development Corporation, and worked for another firm for 2 years. Was on the Downtown Residents Advisory Board because we had purchased a condo for $129,900. We had a 10.25% variable interest rate loan that was readjusting every month. And met a guy named Charles Tyson. Charles Tyson said, you don't want to be an architect, you want to be a developer. Do your own work. So I purchased his mother's triangular piece of land, $5,000 down. It was $350,000, and it was $50 a square foot. We went to New York, did a little typological study for row houses, and built 7 row houses, and it started. And that was 1988. We sold those units in 90, and then the market just flushed. The toilet just flushed out, and there was nothing going on. 92, we did another multifamily project, condo for sale, which I don't suggest you do now because the lawsuits. Fortunately, we didn't get sued in any of the 3 condo deals we did. We stayed away from all those problems. And then, that thing, we made $35,000. The first place we made $500,000 in a year. The second project, we made $35,000 in 2 years. So it sort of ebbs and flows. And
Wow.
now our goal was to get apartments so we could have a more consistent income, and that we've done.
That's incredible. So on the one hand, apart from you said 500,000 the first year, 35,000 the next 2 years.
2 years. That's a combined 35 grand over 2 years.
Wow.
That's a big swing.
Yeah. Ooh, that hurt, yeah.
So everyone wants to be a developer until.
You gotta put some money aside. Don't go out and buy Ski-Doos with all that money.
Or Aston Martins, or whatever, Maseratis, I should say. So at the beginning of the story, I'm very so you practice as an architect, and I assume in your early career you thought you were just going to be a traditional architect. Was that the initial thought when you were practicing at that office? I think so.
I mean, my life is pretty much serendipity. Things just happen. I don't have like a master plan. I've got goals. I set up 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals, business, personal, and I split the business into cars and architecture, so I can have a path at least. Because if you never have a destination you're shooting for, you never get there, obviously. And so that was sort of our target.
So real quick. You said the business is split between cars and architecture. Right. Unfortunately, this is not a car podcast, although, like I said before, we could do another one on that. What is the business portion for the cars you collect? Do you sell them? Is that?
Yeah, we actually have done sort of well buying and selling cars. The market's changing now, so going forward, I'm not sure it's going to be as strong as it has been. We restore them in-house. So we also have guys up in Canada that restore our cars. We have 3 cars up in Canada right now that are in the process of going back to Pebble Beach. One is called a Seata Balbo, 1953, that will go this coming year, and then the following year we'll have a Maserati that we bought that was all falling apart, and we're going to put it back together. And then we have the following year a Lancia Stura. It's one of one in the world, 1938. Pretty interesting cars. It's a wonderful environment to be to look at how these things are built, the people that you interact with. So that's sort of its own business called Johnny's Cars. And we also restore in-house. We have a 1964 Ferrari Lusso we're restoring. We just finished a 300 SL in-house that we have about 17 cars now. We're trying to ratchet that way down from that. Yeah, so it's been fun. It's good and bad. Things do well, things don't do well. Fortunately, we've been on the do well, not the not do well part. We'd like to keep that going too.
Yeah. Is the car business, is that a more recent thing, or was that always parallels from when you started developing projects?
No, we've been doing that. Where first we called it Johnny Club. Our first Johnny Club was in 2000, I think.
Okay.
So we had a few cars, and then we sold a portfolio for $45 million. And I bought it. Aston Martin, as you referred to, it was 2005. I bought a Carrera GT, and I bought a Ferrari Lusso, and that sort of started all that stuff. So then we built in 2006 a project called the Union, which had our garage that we used because the city made us overpark. So we just converted that into the car space, and then we did another one at the Charmer, and then we did another one at the North Parker, and then we did another one at the Polk, 2 floors below. So we had an elevator that took the cars down. And then I have this one here that has the nice vault and the daylight that comes in, and our offices are also in here. So we took our offices from North Parker and split it into 3 apartments, and then moved our offices in here. So the ultimate goal in life is to have no expenses and have virtually no taxable income.
Yeah.
So if I don't have any debt, or if I don't owe anything, or it doesn't cost me anything to live, I don't have to make any money. But I don't have to make any money, then I don't have to pay the government to go waste it.
Yeah. But it's interesting that what you just said is so far, not the car portion, but that as well, but the thinking about the income versus the things you own, the things you have debt on, and all that kind of thinking is pretty far from the average architect's thinking, I feel. That's a generalization, I know, but I find that architects, the profession is tough, and a lot of architects spend a lot of time on their work, and they love their work, but the work is the priority, and it's such that there's nothing else matters to them, right? It's the design, it's the projects getting built, it's the portfolio they build up, and everything else is a far, far second. And obviously what happens therefore is business thinking, forget even, development, but just business and architecture drops way, way down to the bottom. I actually do think that's changing with the younger generations who are much more business inclined, let's say, or for some other term. But so the development aspect, so going back to your story. So when you were approached by the gentleman who said, you don't want to be an architect, you should be a developer, did you know anything about being a developer or development or real estate at that point? Or did you jump in, head first?
Well, 2 things. I was one of the few residents in downtown San Diego, so I was associated with some groups. I approached the developer and because I wanted to break out on my own as an architect and do fee work for that person. And I said, I want to show you my thesis project, which was row houses. And then that's where he just sort of bashed me pretty hard. You don't want to be an architect, you'll never make any money. You want to be a developer, blah, blah, blah. So he sort of, threw me into submission. And from there, I talked to a gentleman named Gary London, who's what's called an economist. He's an accountant from whatever the firm was that's all gone now. Oh, come on. What was Gary's firm with? Anyway, it's gone. But because I had a performer that was made by Gary from his company, Price Waterhouse. There you go. It was like official and it was like real. So I could go, I went and rallied $500,000 of investors. They made a $500,000. I made a $500,000 in the first year on that deal. So they doubled their money. So that worked out well. But I had this pro forma that at the end of the game, the number was the same, but every little line item was completely wrong. Permits were too high. Construction was too low. It's just like interest, all this stuff was just wrong. But it didn't matter because perception's reality, right? The perception is that Price Waterhouse knows what they're doing. The reality is they didn't. And it didn't matter because I got the money and it all kind of worked out in the end. So did I have any experience? No, not whatsoever. It's just a sort of a business. It's very easy. It's a general math business. You know, it's like beans in, beans out. All you have to do is manage your downside and just get information. We're building a house in La Jolla now on the ocean, which has been my dream. And we'll start construction hopefully in the next 30 days. And it's been crazy. I mean, just the whole world has changed so dramatically from when I started doing this. When I started with the Center City Development Corporation, that was a redevelopment corporation in downtown San Diego that was there to push projects through. And that's what they did. Now it seems like the building department, because the CDC is gone, all the redevelopment agencies are completely gone from the state of California. It seems like the city just wants to get in your way. Yeah. They don't want to help you at all. Just to give you a couple informational parts here. So I opened escrow on this property in La Jolla January 3 years ago. So move forward, was it 5 months from now? It'll be January. So it's two and a half years ago. I opened escrow. I was fortunate to get a 2-year escrow because the mother was passing away and they just wanted the basis to be larger, because if the mother passes away, then they take the basis at the current value and they basically get all the money out of the house and they pay no taxes because there's a zero profit there. So I got that time, and it's taken me 2.5 years to go through the process of the city of San Diego. It was a historic, not a great house because we save anything that's good, historic house on a property. And get the permits. And we just yesterday at 4:00 passed the first appeal period. So we have to go through all these processes. No one's appealed. So the 10-day business day appeal is done. Now that was the planning commission. Now we have to go to the coastal commission, which we've already negotiated everything with them. So we should be okay. There's another 10-day appeal period there, business days. Okay, let's go back to the first one. The first 10-day appeal period costs $1,000 for someone to appeal. They have to be at the actual event, which was 2 weeks ago, in order to file an appeal. No one did that because they can do the second one. The second one is free. They don't have to pay anything to appeal. So hopefully there's no problem there. Now, what has to happen to get the second 10 days to be initiated? The city of San Diego, that's a little crazy there. Smoke, what's going on? Are you burning up?
No, wow. I think it's because you did the thing with your hands. I think it thought you were in a concert. I think so.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll keep the hands down. So to get the second 10-day appeal period to initiate and begin, they have to notice the coastal commission. And here's what's arcane. They have to notice them from the U.S. Postal Service. You can't do it FedEx, and they can also notice them in an email, but they have to acknowledge the Postal Service. So some person in the city of San Diego has to then take whatever time they want to send that letter out. Like, really? Just send an email, we're done? Nope, got to be a letter. And then the coastal commission then has to acknowledge that they've received this notice of action in a way so that the 10 days can start. It's like, are you kidding me? We just got it.
Yeah.
First 10 days, please start my second. And so it just is forever. And it's been 2.5 years. It'll be almost 2 years and 8 months to go through the process to get a entitlement permit. Once we get the coastal green light, then we have to go back to the city, and the city has to check that our drawings that we've already done in the building department to build a building against the actual permit that we have to make sure that they marry. That's going to take another 5 days.
Yeah.
You have to get on. And we've been, pushing these guys, and the incompetency is it's up to here. And then they get mad at us because we're pushing and they think that we're, rude and belittling. It's like, just do your job. It's just a 30-day deal that's taken almost 3 years. And, I've got, if I can continue to whine, I have the project where I pointed out the vault, the back cave, what do you want to call it, where I keep the cars. It has an existing 17 units around it, of which one is affordable. Gave them that. Thank you. I moved a historic house from our property over here, and we renovated it, saved it instead of tearing it down, took it from a property downtown, which anybody else would have mauled it. So thank you. We saved that beautiful house. And then we're building 11 more units. So the 11 more units are in process right now. The budget for the 11 more units is approximately $1.8 million. What do you think my permit fees for that were? Oh, that's right. $300,000. I paid $300,000 to build 11 apartments that are 600 square feet each.
Wow.
And the city of San Diego is wondering, why is it so expensive to build? Or why is it so expensive to live here? Who knows? And then if you go and look at some of the stuff that's getting built, the affordable housing units that are getting built, let's say up in LA, that are 100% affordable by some of the named architects up there, they're $1 million a door.
Yeah.
Well, I'm building them for, was it $294 a square foot, which I think is insane. So that's it's like $200,000 a door for me to build these things, because I just cut all the fat out. All those affordable housing projects have just fat. So I all have to be subsidized by the federal government, that I just made a massive contribution to, because we sold 3 of our apartment buildings. So, I'm not here to complain. I'm here to state facts that stuff's really backwards and stuff's really messed up.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the federal government. I mean, there's no accountability anywhere. There's no accountability in the city of San Diego. Building department, there's no accountability anywhere. And that's just going to lead us to disaster. People just borrow more money. You can't borrow more money anymore. All these people that built all these apartment buildings, were assuming they were going to borrow money at 5%. Now that it's 6.5%, they can't afford it. And then the values, which is based on an interest rate, it's called a cap rate, has gone up, which means that the values have come down. And we were lucky to get out, in the 4%-ish cap rate. So anyway, there's my rant. Now back to fun. We're really, really proud of the architecture that we do, because architecture rules. It's first and foremost. It governs every decision that we make. The decisions are based on economizing to get the architecture we want, not to value engineer. We don't value engineer anything. That's just not how we do it. So, but architecture is first and foremost.
The narrative of the approvals and permitting process being totally out of whack now is something we hear from almost every architect. Well, for sure in places like California and New York. Other states it's easier, but still it's just getting progressively more difficult, especially in the big cities like LA and SF. And this sounds really dark. There doesn't appear to be much light at the end of the tunnel. I guess the big question from that and everything you said is that, do you think that if you had to start being a developer now, so you were, I don't know how old you were when you started, you're in your 20s, let's just say, I don't know. If you were to start now, would it have worked out as well?
Well, first of all, would you start?
Or are things just too difficult to make work between all of the approvals and things?
There's like, oh, it's too expensive. Oh, well, when I started, you couldn't do rentals because the rents weren't high enough, but you could do for sale housing condos. So there's always going to be an opportunity. It's always going to be evolving. It's always going to be different. So, I think all the generations look back. I look back and I go, wow. I mean, it's so much harder now than it was when I started. Mm-hmm. And when I was starting, the generations that were finishing or, moving on, probably look back and go, wow, it was so much easier when, there was just unlimited land. We just built forever. So I think in some ways it's always going to be more difficult. And I think there's always going to be opportunities. Now that, the next phase in my opinion is that these apartments are going to significantly drop in value, let's say 20, 25, 30% in their value. So people are going to be able to come in and buy them and then convert them to condos. And that's going to be the next wave. So if they can convert them to condos, then people will come in and there's entry-level housing. That's how it's working. Mm-hmm. That's how it works in dense areas. And then the people will then get, value appreciation, and then they'll be able to step up to either larger condos or to single-family houses. What you're also going to see, which is going to be very significant, I believe, is the resetting of these variable interest rate loans that are, let's call it 5 to 10 years. The loans, they're going to reset. Let's call it in 5 years from now, or 3 years from now. And people that have 2.5%, 3% loans are going to then be shifted into 5 to 6% loans. And mm-hmm. So if you have a $2 million mortgage at 2.5%, that's $5,000 a month plus, let's say, another $1,000 of costs, so $6,000 a month. Mm-hmm. And then you have a little principal thrown, so let's call it $7,500 or $8,000 a month. That's going to move into the high teens, and people are not going to be able to afford it. So then what's going to happen is all these houses that, there's a shortage of houses. Boom, there's going to be a glut like you've never seen. Everybody's going to come to market. Everybody's going to want to dump and get out, and there's going to be a compression in the actual value of these places just because of that. So there's the next two waves that are going to happen. You're going to see a lot of these guys that built these apartments try to rent them up. That's slowing down. The rents are not going up. The rents are compressing and coming down. Everybody built the exact same thing. I mean, if you imagine that the only car that everybody built was a 2-door, no one built a 4-door, no one built a wagon, no one built an SUV. It was all 2-doors. Guess what? At a certain point, you've got too many 2-doors and people don't want those. So the value of those things come down. And then, when the interest rates stay high, people can't afford to finance them. So there's a big reckoning coming. And the federal government's a mess. These guys can't get their stuff together, and there's no accountability there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with taxes. I think those are going up too. Yeah. So there's going to be the big squeeze. I mean, it's going to be, we'll lower interest rates to boost the economy, but we got to mm-hmm. raise taxes. Well, guess what? If you lower that, how's that going to help me when I don't have as much money because you're taxing me, and then you're wasting all that money? So there's another rant, but let's go back to positive, shall we?
Well, so we have 2 more recordings. One will be about the government wasting money, then another about cars. The mm-hmm. Analogy of the 2-door versus 4-door car, were you talking about the apartments all being apartments, and then now the switch is going to be them being converted to condos?
No, I was talking about everybody did 2-bedroom units, and everybody was 2-bedroom. So okay. There was a mad rush to do studios 400 square foot. So we try, every project that we do tries to be a demonstration project. So, it was a while ago. We did a building called the Continental. We built that building with no parking. Well, they made us put some parking out of the ground, but we wanted to do no parking and then do 400 square foot units with the idea that if you didn't have a car, you didn't have a car payment, you didn't have an insurance payment, you didn't have to pay for gas. So all these factors could go into your living, mm-hmm. And smaller units, studios. That was the way we did it was 40 units that had 400 square foot units in them, and that worked out well. Then everybody got on the bandwagon. They're doing that all over the city of San Diego. City of San Diego got smart, and this is actually a positive thing. We don't require parking anymore. Well, that's great. Let the market, let capitalism take over. Let the market actually control the needs and desires of what the market's looking for versus the city of San Diego saying that. So the parking thing was a joke for a long time. And now what they're doing is they're doing these complete community things that say you don't have to go through the community process anymore if you provide a certain percentage of affordable housing, mm-hmm. Which is great. So then that streamlines that process. But that's turning into making all these 8-story buildings everywhere, which isn't necessarily the most livable environment. I believe firmly that the most humane, livable product type is a 3-story building, the bottom floor being retail, and then a 2-story unit on top of that with exterior circulation, all parking on grade, nothing around. The daylight, the open, the air movement, the cross ventilation. We have a project called the North Parker, which pretty much epitomizes that. that vocabulary and that pattern, which I think is the best way to go versus 8-story elevator underground parking.
It's big.
It's just inefficient. It's expensive. I mean, the elevators break. So you put a single elevator in an 8-story building with 40 units, and the elevators break. And when do they break? They break at 5:00 on Saturday. They don't break any other time. And then you being me, has a problem. You got all these angry tenants, and then they're all pissed off. And
it sounds like this has happened before. This is very specific.
Oh yeah. With minor earthquakes, and the minor earthquakes, there's like a ballast in there that moves, and if it's enough, then it hits the wall, and then boom, shuts the elevator down. So then we've got to call out, Kone or whoever is the elevator people at $600 an hour on Saturday. That's right, $600 an hour for the guy to come out and basically push the reset button. So we've watched him a couple times so that we figured out that was our door, that was his elevator room. We figured out how to push the reset button. But if you're a large company, you're not doing that. This is only because we're a small size and we can dance with that it actually works out for us.
It's interesting that you kind of like stick to what you believe in, right? Like instead of providing, like a bunch of parking, a bunch of elevators, and, either because it's required by the city or either because that's what, realtors are saying that's what people want, you just kind of like do what you think is right and what makes sense. And it still seems like your projects are very successful and people want to live in them. So
how does, I guess from what you said, that the question from that is like, how do you balance that, right? Because that's always the way this part of the conversation, what you said, Marina, is, but the way it's positioned is architects have one view of things, and then let's say real estate agents have a very different view, and real estate agents represent what the quote market wants, and developers have potentially a third kind of perspective. And the feeling amongst architects is they're very different perspectives, and they don't like coexist. Like almost philosophically, we don't coexist. We're not the same. But it sounds like you've been able to achieve all. And as to Marina's point, you have your, call them, I guess, design principles in a way. So how does that work?
So let's talk about the house. Let's talk about the house in La Jolla. It's massive. It's 8,400 square feet. It's on the ocean, probably one of the finest pieces of property that exists on the Western United States. So there's a broker, real estate agent. I don't think he's called a broker, that I are very good friends with, Ross Clark, and he helped me actually get this property. And I talked to Ross. I said, Ross, you're dealing with these people in this price range. I have no idea what the market wants. How many linear feet, square feet, or whatever do they want for their clothes, and how big does this need to be, and what are the amenities? So they have their own sort of wish list, but you got to take that with a grain of salt. You got to go look at some of the other houses, and it's, the market's this, it's 5,000 a foot. Yeah, well, the market's 5,000 a foot up to a certain level, and then it really tapers off quickly. Maybe the next 20% of the buildings at $1,000 a foot. It's not 5,000, so it's not linear all the way through.
Wait, when you say 5,000 a foot, what are you referring to?
For the value of it. So if it's 1,000 square foot, it's worth 500,000. If it's 10,000, it's worth 50 million, right? So somewhere in between is a value. What do you need? We need this and that. Oh, people like this, the people like that. Well, great, because people like that because that's what they've been given. If you look at most buildings now, they're white and black. Really, that's like new. And we try to, our favorite color is either white or black. That's our favorite color. But we prefer to have everything out of concrete. So the house is all out of concrete, and it'll have some wood in it. But now we're on the ocean, and you have to like deal with the gnarliness of the ocean. It's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic and drama, and we'll see how it goes. Our stuff evolves. We change stuff a lot. It's just a different way of doing it, and it's worked out well for us. I mean, we're out there changing stuff because we don't like the way the building's looking. An architect working for somebody to do these 11 units, I don't know what they would charge, 50 grand, $100,000. There's no way we could do it for that. We can't do that for fee and then actually have a business. But there should be a massive delta 10 to 20, but 20% is what you try to make. I don't like the word profit or margin. You want to try and build something and there's a 20%, room inside of it. That's how you make income, right? Because if it costs you what it's worth, then necessarily you're not going to be able to get any rental income because you're debt and so forth. So with that being, told, we try to economize, we try to simplify, and we've learned to do that. We learned to ask all the questions because we can put the time into it. Because if you look at the line items, the general contractor, developer, architect, there should be a line item that says, fee, and fee, and you put them all together, then we get a little bit more time to do something. We're talking to ourselves, right? So the developer says, hey, I want this, and the contractor says it's going to cost you that, and the architect says, I'll draw that. Well, that's all me, right? There's no triangle. There's no triangle with each person pulling. There's a ball and there's a little bullet in the middle, and we're writing the bullet. The efficiency is massive. The drawings are minimal. The drawings don't even have specifications. Those are in the contracts with all the subcontractors. And we had a concrete guy. Basically, we have 3 concrete guys we work with, and it looks just like that building we just did. And that's a spec. It looks just like that building. All the details. And, by the way, here are some details that you never look at, which they don't. They never look at the drawings. It's just so amazing. It's just, and even hand it to them, they roll it up and stick it in there, and they just build. They're building, they're messing stuff up outside there, but that's their problem. I'm trying to help them. They appreciate that. There's no RFIs, there's no job directives, there's no real change orders. It's just like, get this thing going, get through it. We'll build this building probably in 5 months. The house will build in a year. Yeah, the house is like a 2-year build for sure, with hourly cost and time and materials. It's brutal how, John Doe gets waxed, and then the architects hopefully charge them something. But the saddest thing, which is now really changing, which is exciting, is let's say that it's a $20 million house, and let's say the architect's fortunate enough to make $500,000, right? Let's say, luckily. So what's that on 20 million? 5 is like a 2.5% fee. I don't think they're getting that. Not in San Diego. Maybe they get 250, something like that. So let's say it's a 1% fee. Well, you have the 2 real joker brokers that show up, right? They put it on there, and they got all the flybys and over. And they're, they used to make 2%, 2%, or 2.5%, and 2.5%. Yeah. There's 5%. There's $1 million in fees for some knucklehead just to put something up on a post, and then some other knucklehead just to happen to know somebody that came into town through some referral. It's just criminal, but that's done. That double dip is done. Yeah, which is good. We'll see how that vets out. But now it's the person that's posting it or representing the seller that is getting the commission. And if you got a buyer that you really need a buyer, let's just do that. Let's go back to that $20 million building. Okay, so I'm going to sign an agreement because I have to by the Department of Real Estate or the realtors. I have to sign an agreement with my guy that's showing me houses. And let's say he wants 2.5 points on the $20 million. That means I'm going to pay him $500,000 to drive me around town looking for a property.
Yeah.
Where's the value?
You better have a nice car if it drives you around for that much.
Well, that's why he has a nice car.
Where is that? Oh, you have no idea what it cost me to, operate and blah, blah, blah. It's like, come on, really? I don't think so. I mean, this is all going to go the TD Ameritrade way. It's just stupid. Now, different price points have different realities. Yeah. So anyway,
have you ever been interested in developing single family homes rather than focusing mostly on multifamily?
We did a project called Kettner Row, which was 16 row houses, which was really nice. The problem with the single family home and or the row houses that we did is that the first buyer is insanely picky. Oh, they'll go there and they'll look for that. See, look, you can see here that drywall's got a nick. Make sure that's perfect. The second buyer has no concerns whatsoever. Boom, I'm moving in. I'm going to slap some paint. But the first person just tears the place apart, and it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. They think they're buying a brand new car. The second guy sees the car has put 20,000 miles on it, and they know there's rock chips and stuff.
Interesting.
So it is interesting. So it's no fun. But it's very fun as a product type. I'd love to do, 10 10 homes in a certain idiom somewhere. I'm not sure, where, how, or when, because the price point has to be so big in order to.
Yeah.
So back to my permit thing. So I paid $30,000 a door for permits for the 600 square foot unit. And if you go build a single family house in La Jolla, you're going to pay about $40,000.
Wow.
Okay. And that house is worth, let's say, $3 to $5 million. Who knows where it is? My little studio, my little one bedroom is worth 400 grand. So where's the parity there? How's this city of San Diego figuring? Well, they don't care. Mm-hmm. You complain, oh, well, you talk, no one cares.
Yeah. So the single family housing hasn't worked out so much because the buyers are much trickier and also the math is much tighter.
And then there's, where's the opportunity? You show me where I'm going to do that. There's no more out there anymore, right? It's all here. And then that means density. And then all the properties that you could do a single family house on are now being retraded for the dense environment.
Interesting. Going back to what you said about real estate agents, it's tough, right? Because we know plenty of agents. Some of them we're good friends with. But yeah, there's I would agree with your remarks, and it's hard
overpaid. Overpaid.
It's hard for folks to, and this is the issue I think with architects and any other profession. I think it's hard for non-architects to understand how much work goes into being an architect, and they think it's comparable to what they're doing, and in a lot of cases, it's not even close. Especially when you talk about the fees. I mean, it's really backward.
That goes with that. California has 10 years of strict liability.
Yeah.
10 years of strict liability. So you are responsible. You can't, you could BK out of it. But you're like the contractors can just dissolve a corporation. They could build a property with a corporation, dissolve it. A year later, their liability's gone. They have a tail, and they have insurance that's claims made insurance. So, their insurance, if it's in place when the actual defect happened, 10 years from now, you don't have to have ongoing insurance each time, but the architect has to have insurance when it was built and when the claim was made. That's claims made. So I have to carry insurance for the full 10 years. It's just bullshit. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know who lobbies or who doesn't lobby or who's smart or who's dumb, but fortunately, I haven't really been sued in 40 years of doing this.
Wow.
But I've been paying insurance. My E&O was $25,000 a year last year. Now it's 15 because there's two people in the market. So I have no clients and no claims, but I'm still paying. I was paying 25, now I'm paying 15, and then I have my general liability insurance on top of that too.
Yeah,
yummy.
I know. Hey, you're not doing a good job here. This is a Friday. We're trying well, actually, I guess it's well timed. So Friday, we'll get margaritas after this. But talking about the real estate agent and contractor and all the other kind of related folks. So how much of that is in house for you now, and how much of that was in house when you started?
So good question. When we started, we had a general contractor. I drew with one person my first project. That was when we were doing pencil on trace paper, or actually whatever it is, vellum. Vellum. And I think that let's call that 2000. Let's call that 1990. And then by 2000, we were starting to use computers. And I think that was because the first project I built by myself, had someone help me draw it, and then they were gone. And then I had a general contractor that put a superintendent on the job. I was there every day, so I was basically the superintendent, but I paid for that because I didn't have the experience in the processing. Mm-hmm. The banks were going to loan me money on that. I needed the general contractor with the insurance, with the history, with the experience to do that. And then we got, so let's call that 1990. By the year 2000, we were now building one of the buildings. We're building a couple at a time. We were building, I'm trying to think what that was. I think that was 2000, let's say 98, that we started building our own stuff because we found that the contractor was a hack. and we were fixing their stuff, and we were managing their superintendent. And then we had a contractor walk off a job in the year 2000. And it was a nightmare, so then I had enough money, we kept going, and then we just took over and we said, no more general contractors. Now it's Matthew, my son, architect, he's upstairs, and myself, and we have sort of one helper that's managing the 11 units. I'm actually managing that while he's drawing, because I can't draw on the computer, drawing the house. And then when we start the house construction, it'll be me and Matthew 50-50. 50% of the time me, 50% of the time him. And then he'll look for more stuff for himself to develop.
Cool. So building has been in-house for actually quite some time. Yeah,
we actually had sort of the same cycle point in the early 2000s where, we started framing ourselves. We started digging the footings ourselves and pouring them out. We did it here. Basically, there was a $160,000 line item budget, but that was actually what someone wanted to charge us to basically put, mud in the ground with a bunch of rebar. So we did that ourselves, I think, for like $95,000. So there was like a $70,000 delta.
Wow.
In that thing, profit. And you can march through all of it and you just keep rubbing the middleman out and out and out and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the house goes. We're getting, owners use numbers for some stuff. The beauty of our buildings is that the architecture and spatial quality is what governs, right? It's not the fine details. It's not like this corner comes together exactly at a 90-degree point. It's sort of the little rougher and the nastier, the better, for me in concrete at least. Because I'm not trying to be chasing my tail for perfection in concrete. Yeah. Just won't happen. And I'm not willing to pay for it. So, we use like an AC grade concrete that has no footballs in it, but, the actual pattern of the wood shows up in the concrete. And we use the guys that, build our underground parking facilities to build it. They're good. The guys are magic. They've got two buildings they did. Fort Oak and what was the other one? Polk, that they built these fins that are just insane. They're 40 feet high and 6 feet deep. They go from 4 inches wide and they taper like in a trapezoid to like 8 inches in the back. They're laser straight and all the way up and down. Just incredible what they could do out of this concrete. The spans are different. The sections are different.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
That sounds slick. It's an interesting point about the execution of the architecture. And, a lot of architects are very, very detailed people, and they are a lot of times perfectionists. And I had this thought the other day when we were touring some spec houses. And a lot of spec houses, as you might imagine, if you look at the details, they aren't as clean as in a proper custom house. I mean, I'm talking about a custom house where the client doesn't care really about real resale value and they're just doing it for themselves. There's a very good chance that those corners are going to be ultra crisp. And as a perfectionist myself, I adore that and I love that. But it also makes me think that, especially when we look at some of the older architecture that's just phenomenal. It was built a long time ago and therefore pretty sloppy in its construction. The reality is that for resale, at least, you don't have to have the world's perfect joinery between corners to have a space feel good for the average person. It's just, it doesn't, if the architecture is good, right? You have good lighting, good proportions, good, interesting, whatever. That is like 95% of the impact. And the other 5%, no person, aside from an architect, will notice, this little detail here is kind of off by whatever amount, or this is slightly crooked. Like, no one's going to know.
It's true. So you're chasing, that last 5% for perfection costs you 25% of the building.
Yeah.
Leave it alone. Let it go.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a hack, but you certainly don't need to over embellish and drive crazy everybody and their mother. But back to the whole concept of fit and finish and so forth. We're going to pour concrete floors for the house in La Jolla, and I really wanted to put walnut floors in because I've got concrete ceilings, concrete floors. Now I'm going to put rugs in. But the reality is, you start weighing these things where you're going to put rugs in anyway. So if you're going to put rugs in, you're going to be covering most of the floor. So then why would you put walnut floors in that are going to get thrashed from the sun, thrashed from the sand, thrashed from abuse? So these are like these decisions that we make, and we try to warm it up otherwise because it needs to be warm. And our buildings, they really need to have all of the furniture in it. So we, either design or incorporate all the furniture for all of our buildings too.
That makes sense.
It's important that we do all that stuff.
Is the house in La Jolla, is it a spec house and that it's to be sold, or is that a house for you to keep?
No. This is it's a 1031 exchange, but inevitably it's to keep. It's not to spec on. No, okay. Because then there's a problem again. I'm responsible for 10 years, and so when something goes wrong, it's just unbelievable that I'm getting the phone call. Hey, it's 5 years down the road. Well, where's the sub that didn't do this or that right? They're calling me, and I've got responsibility.
Yeah.
Probably even though two other people sold between then and then, it's like, why is it now still my problem?
Yeah. What about real estate license? Is that in-house, or have you ever considered it to keep that 2.5% percent?
No, we can. You can sell. Owner can sell their own property, and the owner can build their own property. So we don't even have a contractor's license. Mm-hmm. We're not contracting for anybody, right? I mean, if you really get technical about it, you are contracting sort of for an LLC, but it's the LLC doing the contracting. The state of California doesn't require it, which is interesting because we were going to build a high rise with no license. No contractor's license. And
because you're the owner.
Subtraction. Owner builder is the term.
Yeah, what's a funny, stupid thing is that we've had owners we've worked with who operate that way, but I've never thought about it from our side. If I were to be a developer and I were to buy a piece of property to be sold, that we would do the same thing. Because of course we and a lot of architects have contemplated that. And one of the things you think about is like, okay, becoming a licensed GC, but if you're not performing work for others, then you don't have to.
Yeah, it's the trail. How does this all work out? How does the liability happen? How does it work? Yeah. If you're don't stamp the drawings, just have the structural engineer. I do some expert witness testimony, and it's interesting to see how that works too. They want insurance. That's all they want. It's easy. The insurance carrier's there; they have to pay. But if you're sitting there all bare and, you have a house, they're not going to come after your house. Yeah. But when you have, tremendous assets, they'll come after that, or they'll want your insurance. So that, my theory is you can never buy enough insurance and you should never use it, because when you want it, if you've used it, you're not going to have it. Yeah. It's important. It's important to protect yourself. So now if I stop working today, I have 10 years of insurance I still have to buy. At $15,000, $150,000 if it's only going to be staying at that rate.
Right.
And attorneys have it. There's only 1 year statute of limitations for them. There's 2 years for a business. It's just, where do we go wrong?
Yeah.
What happened here?
Well, I've said many times on the show, and I keep saying it in hopes that it'll bleed out there, and some listeners in the future will do it. I think folks who are trained in architecture and perhaps practiced in architecture for a period of time need to leave architecture and go into public policy to advocate for architects, also quite selfishly, but also just for things that make more sense. I think there's a lot of smart folks in this profession, and sometimes I think to myself, if some of us could be transplanted in positions of actual authority, that would be quite substantial.
Yeah, I have let's call it a business coach, and I said I'd like to add to my legacy to try and do something like that. And I'm not really good with stupid and dumb. I don't work well with that. And Mary, she said, you're not the right guy to be on the planning commission. You're not the right guy to try and author something for the city to change all the codes and stuff, because you've never seen stupid and dumb until you get involved in that circus act, the politics. And it's just, it's just bad. So it's unfortunate that's not going to happen for me.
But I feel like you're doing your bit, right? With first of all the work that you do, but you also created those courses, architect as developer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you kind of like share what you've done and what possibly could other architect be doing, and by not just being architect. Why do you think so little number of architects become developers and maybe beyond that, like, why do you think developers have such bad reputation amongst, general public, but also architects?
So I don't think the architects understand the process of being a developer. I take that back. Most of them should, right? Because they actually do the work for the developers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're scared. Maybe they think it's, more risk. I think there's less because you control more. Controlling is the most important part. So I don't know why architects don't do it. They should start by doing their own house, but then you gotta have a lot of control. You can't like just go crazy. I'm going to make something that's, super great. Doesn't matter what it's worth. It does matter what it's worth. It doesn't matter what it's cost. It doesn't matter what the value is at the end, so that there's a margins there. So this is a business that you're doing. So I don't know why they don't do that. What was the second question though?
Why do you think developers have a tendency to have a bad reputation? Yeah.
Because I think it is, like I say, so easy to do. You basically get some brokers, there's our friends again, that, are sitting around a bar thinking, hey, Billy Bob's got a piece of dirt here. Why don't we just go hire, John Doe architect? I don't care what he does, because these brokers don't understand what's good or bad. They hire like the loser hack architect to draw because he's cheap, yeah. And they look for the bottom line cheap because they want a delta, and they don't know what the vinyl windows are great. Give me that white and black building that I saw down the street. Hey, let's do the 400 square foot units. Let's do the parking like this. And they're not sophisticated or educated. Now, some of the larger development companies are more sophisticated, but they are not hiring the most talented architects. Trust me, to put up 50 floors or 35 floors or 24 floors of concrete, it's pretty much the same price no matter who's doing it. Skinning the building, you need to shake that thing as hard as you can to get all the goodies off it. I mean, some of these buildings are just embellished to look like 15 different buildings. They're just one building. And the 15 different embellishments cost a lot of money. One, simplified skin on it is a way less expensive option. And they're just not hiring the talent, or maybe the talent they're hiring is crazy. I mean, you've seen buildings that do this, and it's like, why? Where's the value at? What am I getting out of this? It's costing me a lot more. Is there some way now that I'm getting more income? Is there an efficiency that happens? So I don't see it. Simple is good. Simpler is more better.
Yeah, towers are tough, right? Because you're right. It is just the floor plate stacked a bunch of times. That's one of the reasons why I got fatigued.
Those architects, I don't know if those architects are making real money though, man. You just draw one floor, just hit go, and it goes. There's a guy named Joe Wong in town who's a wonderful friend of mine, and that guy is renting money, doing these high rises. Just unbelievable.
As an architect or as a developer?
Architect.
Really?
Making huge money, huge fees, because he's drawing one floor plan. I'm drawing 3 floor plans for my house of the same size that Joe's drawing one of those, and he's doing it 35 times, and he's pushing the button. It's crazy, and he's done enough of these. He's got all the detail. It's just a mill now. It's going to be interesting to look back over, what happened over the last 5 years of development and what the kind of product type that got delivered. It's turning into like all these high rises are now Ritz-Carltons. They're just super high end. Everybody's got a goodie bar, and they've got a kegerator, and there's a roof deck, and no one uses any of this stuff. There's a gym, no one uses that either. But you have to have that to be competing with the guy across the street. I mean, I was trying to do a high rise on a 50 by 100 lot. And it was going to have no amenities, but it had a roof deck, but that was about it. and the parking was all automated. And I just kept pushing on so many strings. And finally, it's like, can't do it. The cost of money is too high. The cost of construction is going crazy. We need a reset and all that stuff. We need the recession to pummel some industries to get the cost of concrete. Geez, concrete, that's just like nuts. $200 a yard. 5 years ago it was $100. Why is it twice as much? It's the same stuff, right? Same goodies come out of the ground, same trucks deliver it, same water goes in, same Portland cement. Why is it 200? Why is it double? Oh, well, they're building all these big buildings. Okay, great. Now it's done. Where's the big buildings? Oh, they're done. Okay, why is this $200 a yard? This COVID inflation has like been brutal.
Yeah.
Really brutal.
It's not really dropped since then either. It's kind of stayed about the same price across the board for pretty much everything from what we've seen.
Wood's down big. That must be one of the most cyclical parts based on single family, because we had a wood bid that was $260,000 for these 11 units, and it dropped down to like 210, 220 because the price of lumber went down.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, big time. So that's doing this copper's, sort of edge and copper's all in the wires and stuff. Roofing, asphalt, we're still getting increases in that. Drywall sort of mellowed out. You just can't put price caps on this stuff because then they'll start making less of it. It's capitalism, You gotta have the market forces to weigh these things back and forth. Gets too expensive, guess what? Stuff stops, prices come down. There'll be an equilibrium where stuff works out.
Do you ever consider doing projects outside of California where things are,
cheaper,
a bit
easier, faster?
No,
Really?
I don't want to work for anybody. So there's that element. The second thing is if I can't get to it in 20 minutes, I don't want to own it. I just had a guy actually at Pebble Beach. I had a guy from India come up and say, "Hey, do you want to work on a project in India?" And I said, "I just have no interest in doing that." It's just, I don't want to give you all the math here and now, but basically, at the end of the day, the beans that are still left on the table for the architect after he's paid all of his employees and the insurance and the overhead and office and stuff is pretty nominal. I don't know what the spread is, but it's certainly not the spread if you do the development yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not even close.
Yeah.
But there's the loss too. I mean, the architect's got sort of he's hedging his highs and lows. If he's put all this money into a deal and the deal goes where the cap rates are just getting stupid, what happens there? He's sitting there and he's making no money, or he's given back all of his fees, and that's what's going on right now.
So
the developers, not the architects.
Yeah. So that's the other thing too with being a developer, and let's say we're talking about someone who's starting off. There's the potential to make a lot more money than as you would if you were just an architect on a project, but there's also massive risk because you're in it, and you're probably at the very, very least doing all of your design, drawing, and some amount of construction administration or construction management for free. It's all just sweat equity. So I don't know really what my question is. I suppose when you started off, how did you manage and to get through the projects and the times where the projects did not work out, and you were actually, to your example, getting only $35,000 over the course of 2 years? Like, how do you have stability when things are going that much up and that much down?
In the beginning, you don't. You get through them the skin of your teeth and credit cards. And I remember my kids went to private school because there wasn't a school downtown, and I made enough money to pay for their school that year. Not for me, so we hopefully got another project going that sort of helped. And that's how those guys get in trouble too, because they're behind the eight ball and they need to do the next deal, just to get fee to come in. And all of a sudden the music stops and then they've over consumed their fees. And again, I don't want any fees. I don't want any income. I don't want any architectural fees. I don't want developer fees. I want to build this stuff for what it costs and make rental income because I have an offsetting depreciation to take care of that.
Gotcha. And that's also where owning the structures and continuing to own them and rent them as opposed to selling them is the key. So, like, how big is your portfolio? I mean, do you still sell condos? Do you still sell property, or is it only rental?
We don't sell. We haven't sold condos since '96. So the apartment buildings we sold. We still have a 10-year tail on those. We just sold $85 million worth of those in 3 buildings that ended up in October last year. We have 2 buildings that we own now. One that we're doing the 11 units, which is a collective 17 plus 11, 28 plus 3, 31 units plus this garage. And then we have the 31 units plus a bunch of retail for North Parker. We have the vacant land downtown, and we have the house on the water that we're building right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how big is your office?
How many people?
Me and Matthew, 2 people.
Just
Get out of here.
2.
Wow.
Yeah, me and Matthew. Mm-hmm.
You guys are.
We have a part-time bookkeeper that comes in once a week for 3 hours, 4 hours, and then we have a sort of a graduate that's maybe 2 to 5 years out of school that's doing 25 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a matter of just getting the drawings done, right?
Yeah.
The building, it's the easy part.
So how many projects do you have ongoing, like under design or construction or permitting and all that process
we try to build one a year. Build one a year. That's our goal. We've been doing it for 40 years. We built 40 buildings. So right now we have the 3 units that are getting converted in the North Parker from our 2,000 square foot office. And then we just got, smacked in the face at the end of that. Oh, by the way, you got to add 3 more sprinkler heads. Well, it's already an existing building. Nope, sorry. 3 more sprinkler heads. And that, there's a $7,500 cost for that. And then there's the five weeks of just cramming down the city to get this going. That's delayed, and we do that. And I was supposed to have that. Here's back to the beans. I was supposed to have that all done, rented June 1st. Well, $40,000 later, it's going to be October 1st that they're rented. So we have that. We have the 11 apartments that we're doing here. We're just finishing up the historic house, and then we have the house in La Jolla. What happens after that, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
So all of these projects that you guys do, are those mostly self-financed? Do you have to raise money? Do you have investors? Do you take on construction loans?
We haven't had investors since 2000.
Gotcha.
We had a construction loan on the building that we're at. Let's call it Newton or the Barrio. And, at 8.5%, I have the cash because we sold the buildings. I'm just paying my own money to build it. I think it was $8 or $9 million. Like, why would I want to borrow at 8.5%? Now, when that money starts coming down, that's construction money. I think permanent money is probably in the 6 range.
Mm-hmm.
When that gets back if it gets back into the low 5s or 4s, then I'll go and borrow money off of this. But right now, I can't get 6 to 8% on my money anywhere else that's safe. So we're using cash for that. The house will build with cash too. Mm-hmm. Remember, I don't want any expenses, and I don't want any income. So that's sort of a way of doing that. But I don't know if that's the smartest strategy. You really want to have some kind of deck if stuff goes wrong. Earthquakes happen, buildings fall down, they catch fire. There's just, you get the banks to have a little bit of risk in there. And then if you can get the money at less, lease or cheap enough, then that's a good way to leverage that stuff.
Interesting. So at 2 people completing 1 project per year, and you have like a couple of things always kind of ongoing, that must mean how much construction administration or construction management takes place? Like normally you'd have a GC and a super, who's there, or the super's there every day, and there's a lot of oversight, general conditions, and a lot of staffing that takes place just to keep a project alive during construction. Are you at the point where you trust your individual subs to do their work and not much oversight is needed, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's not as complicated as you think. It's really not. You really don't need the RFI's job director. We use the same subcontractors. We trust those guys. Our door guy is the only guy. We don't even bid out anybody. He's just our guy. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of problems with window guys putting in faulty windows that leak. That's been really fun fixing for him. Drywall guys, sort of the same. They mess stuff up. He did it last. We basically have a wall between two units that has studs, that are structural, and then we have a 1-inch airspace. Then we use 1 5/8-inch metal studs, that span top to bottom. Well, these knuckleheads attached them to the wall with half channels. So I had to go through. That was their stupid. It didn't say that in the drawings. And then they paid for all the hat channel, and they had to unscrew them. 2 layers of drywall on one side, one on the other. So stuff like that happens. But that's our guys that we use, and we cycle through them. Sometimes they underbid. Sometimes they can't perform, and sometimes we get new guys. But I really would like. Our roofer is the same guy. And sometimes these guys are 10 or 20% less expensive than the other ones because we have simple detailing, and they've worked with us, and they know it's like they're going to get in, they're going to get out in 5 days. We're not going to be in their way. We're going to make sure that nobody else is in their way.
Right.
There's a clear path of travel to get to it. So there's an efficiency in that. We'll see how it goes with our concrete bidding on the house.
Do you get approached by private clients often? They're like, "Oh, I've seen your buildings."
No, I wouldn't say often. We have been approached, but I do put out the vibe that we're not interested in doing this for anybody. So I'm not sure if it's a strategy that we haven't marketed is why we don't get the stuff, or the strategy that we don't want the work has not gotten us the stuff, or people just know that we only do our own stuff. I think in the multifamily development world, people know that we have no interest in doing anybody's work.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's funny when they start, "Oh yeah, well you're going to do this," and I'm going to no. One guy was pretty offended, actually.
Really?
I'm John Doe. I'm the big dog. You're going to no, we're not going to do that either.
What about property management? You must own quite a number of properties at this point, and there's a lot of tenants, a lot of people. Do you outsource that to a different company?
No, that's where you really can lose your ass, because they don't care, and they're doing it in such a thin margin that they can't care, right? So they can't put the time in. We have a lady named Guyel that works probably 10 hours a month, maybe a little bit more, ebbs and flows. Then we have 2 guys, Mario and Luis, that take care of the buildings. Granted, we have 80 apartments now. We had a couple hundred where we had several layers of people. That was just kind of a joke. So Guyel rents them out. Matthew sort of oversees that a little bit, does the contracts, the leases, and then Mario and Luis take care of the buildings. But again, if I could have no more buildings, I'd be happy. It's not going to happen. But it would be very advantageous to get in that position.
To
not have property management. It's horrible.
I see. So how many?
Because you basically, if you have a property manager, you're going to manage the property manager.
Yeah.
You're not going to let them just go and do their thing. Well, why am I getting this bill? Why am I getting that bill? Why did they replace the refrigerator? Or the door handle was broken? Why didn't you just replace the door handle? Oh, well, you're second guessing us. Well, we sent Billy Bob out there, and Billy Bob charges this, and door handle boys that. And by the time it took us, because we don't want to do any work, it was just cheaper for us to go. Like, are you getting it? Same thing with the toilet. Same thing with everything else. Same thing with, we just gave the tenant a 3 months rent because it was a hassle that, something went wrong, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a thankless job, though. Property management is really bad.
Yeah. Having been a renter, I've seen people turn into babies. So 80 to 100 or 80 or so units. How many buildings is that split across?
3 buildings.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I was curious, like, how do you decide on which property to purchase and develop? Like, I don't know. Do you do like intense research, look at comps, do a bunch of pro formas, or you just kind of like follow your guts, find a cool piece of land that has potential, and just
It's all this serendipity stuff that just sort of happens, right? So like for instance, this property here, we were trying to move the historic house off the downtown property so we could build a high rise. So we were looking. Finally, boom, there it is. There's the historic house. There's the property. It was $1.8 million. And so we're going to do that. And I'm like, well, if we're going to do that, then maybe we should be great people and like leave land for two more other houses. And then that became kind of a nightmare because, what's the timing and what do the people want to pay? And they think they're doing me a favor by giving me a house. Like, no, you're not. Stop. That's not working out. So then I said, well, why don't we move the back cave out of the ground up to here, put it on grade, get a window. There's a big good news way to go. And we'll move out of there. We'll rent that out, sublet that, come over here. And then if we're doing that, why don't we build 15 apartments to go because we have the land? And it just sort of evolved into this project. So, you say, do you do your research? No, it just sort of happens. Matthew's looking for a smaller project to do now. So we'll see how that goes.
So it is a family business. Your son is part of it. Your wife also is your business partner, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool and I would say unusual to like put all of your eggs in the same baskets, like family, work, cars, architecture, development. And I'm sure it's not for everybody, but it seems like you found your balance.
It's efficiency, right?
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I mean, it's like a changing of the guard for me, as far as the car collecting is going, and as far as the building is going. Where am I going? What am I doing? Mm-hmm. On my runway, I have 3 years of the cars, and I probably have 2 years of the house. And then what happens after that? I don't know. Matthew's going to, hopefully do his deal, and I can help him do that, and he can start his own world. Maybe I compress the cars down to less than 10. I don't know.
Actually, that was going to be my question, which perhaps you just answered, is what are the big next steps? Or actually, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned having a 1, 3, and 5 year plans always. So I was curious to know what those are for you at this moment.
Get to the point where I'm happy making money. When we have the house in La Jolla, I need to rent that out so it pays for the property taxes. Sell some cars so that I don't, tap into any of my capital to build a house. So I have 3 cars I'm selling. I'm selling a Ferrari Lusso 63 that we're finished in restoration. I'm selling a TZ1, which is a mid-60s Alfa Romeo, and I'm selling a 300 SL Roadster. So we'll have those cars gone, and that will be enough money to build the house.
Do you think that the development business would have been possible or would have been as successful without the car company? Like, did the car company support development business at any point in time, like consistently? Like, did you need to have both?
Sometimes the car company would pay rent to the development company. Again, now I don't want to do that. I don't want to be paying any rent, and I don't want to get any income. So we're trying to push that, that back. Mm-hmm. They're 2 separate, completely independent elements.
Interesting.
If I sold other cars today, I would just rent this space out.
Gotcha. I suppose that question I was asking was probably for folks listening, thinking that they're going to dip into this. They're probably wondering, well, do I need to also have a second business or plan B business to support, when I'm trying to become a developer?
No, the plan B business is the apartments. So start with building your own house, start with building 4 units and start working your way up the food chain. Start small, go through the whole process. What happens is people will start, they'll do a project, they'll get 50% through, then they'll start the next one, and they haven't learned if this one's going to succeed or fail, and then just bring the same tenants, TENANTS, not like a tenant occupying space, but a tenant through, and they both fail because they haven't seen. I mean, we've seen all the problems that go through, and there are many that go through ongoing, like the sprinkler thing. We couldn't have foreseen that. It was a nightmare. No fun. That we now get jacked for another 5 to 6 weeks, and they don't care. The city doesn't care. They don't care. They're not helping anybody's cause.
No, and I feel like one of the side effects of that, those challenges and the costs, is that you have a section of people who do remodels, additions, I'm thinking mostly single family owners. They do work with architects and contractors at, let's say, a low tier. A lot of contractors cut a bunch of corners because there's just, you can't do it the quote proper way and have enough money to do that. Or you get the split between that, the ultra high where you're spending a crazy amount of money, but you can afford to do that. And then the middle section is really, really hard to exist in.
I have to apologize. That's my steel guy. He's showing up with the columns. I just turned the phone off as it was ringing.
Gotcha. Well, okay. I'll ask you one final question, quick question.
Sure.
Favorite building? We always ask every architect this, but also since you're a car guy, favorite car?
Favorite car is the one that starts. Favorite building is hopefully going to be
the one that starts.
The new house.
Okay.
Currently, it's this one. Currently, it's the back gate with the beautiful. I can spin that, see if the glare has changed at all. No, not really. But there's the big vault.
Wow. I didn't see the roof before. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so we put that together, myself and 4 guys, 2 months, 6,000 bolts and nuts.
Wow. 6,000 bolts and nuts.
There's the, I can see that's the Maserati, and then this guy here is Alpha. Cool. There's a Porsche in the back. The car that's, here we go again. That's there is the 300 SL. There's some stuff when we go into Villa d'Este. We've won a few. We won a few awards doing the cars and won a few awards doing the architecture. So it's good. It's fun.
Yeah,
Life's good.
Life is good.
That's awesome. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate your time. It's a lot of fun. Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching this video on YouTube. If you like what we're doing, then please support our show by hitting that subscribe button.
You can also find us on most of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're mostly on Instagram. And you can reach out to the hotline, 213-222-6950. You can send a text message or leave a voicemail. If you have any reaction to this recording, any questions you might have, or guest suggestion, feel free to send it our way.
Cool. Thank you for watching and see you next week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.